Alright, we are doing another battlefield overview, and this one is Reno's Fall. A fine map, one that seems, I don't know, maybe it's just my luck, it seems to have fallen out of a number of rotations, but again, maybe that's me. So in this one, the attackers are the CSA. They do not have arty. The Union have some arty, although it's really oddly placed. And we'll give a chance to take a look at this. But this is one that you can certainly play very wide left. We're coming out of CSA spawn here. There is this stone wall along the road. It's not terribly important yet, but it will be. Sometimes the CSA will split its forces, send some right, some left, and so those on the right will probably start moving up on the right. Now, this, like other parts of some South Mountain maps, it's a lot of big broken rocks and trees. That's the right side. The left side also has some of that. So up here is where you'll sometimes get some early conflict. The Union might try to make a stand in that snake fence there. Sometimes, so that's actually what I'm showing you now is the kind of straight push, almost the straight or the right side CSA push only goes a little bit further over there before you start running into the map boundary. The point of contention, it's approximately around those cap rocks. However, at least in the past on this one, it's a really odd optical, maybe delusion, that you can cap the point from here. I'm not sure if that's still the case. It doesn't really matter because, again, hit T. If it says capturing or defending, then you're on point. If not, you're not. But you know about where the cap is. It's between those rocks and that section of the road. So, since we're already kind of on the right, I guess we can just finish off the right, and then we'll take a look at what the CSA push up the left is. The push up the right is simple enough. The CSA would just push from large rock formation to large rock formation if they have greater numbers and they're able to move with some celerity and hit their shots. I believe, I didn't check, I believe at least some of the CSA here have 42s, and so for this kind of fighting, I think the 42s, I seem to recall using 42s on this map as a CSA, can work quite a ways. Yeah, it opens up a bit here, which is can make it tough to push further than that because you have the lumber pile there, you have a rock formation here, and then you have another lumber pile back here, some upturned roots. This can be a kind of soft fort for the Union, and if they lose, they can always pull back into the corn and the fence, and Union spawn, for what it's worth, is just right up there on that road. I think we'll be able to fly and see where their artillery spawns. And let's see. So yeah, this is the house, the cabin there from Garland's Stand, and you can see that is where the Union arty starts. And so they got to bring themselves, unless you've pre-ranged some of the stuff, you got to kind of wheel those things all the way down here, and then to try to make them useful. Sometimes the Union will set them up right about here, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to nail anything along that stone wall, because that stone wall tends to be a fight. And then their friendly infantry can hang out in the corn, the fence, the woods, log piles, rocks, all that stuff back there in case the CSA overcommits and overextends into pushing it. But the CSA, for its part, it can push into this corn. It absolutely can, and so the Union shouldn't assume that they are safe there. And the CSA can push through the corn along that snake fence from a left side push, which we'll take a look at next. So to do that, again, that's the point. This is kind of where we broke off and did our right side attack. If the CSA wants to do a left side attack, they can swing even further to the left, but they're going to have to eventually get back near us. And again, there are large rock formations. If the Union sends some scouts up, they got their binos working. This shouldn't surprise them. You can see it gets very steep here, and so that can be used as a deflate. Sometimes the Union will send maybe a whole company to garrison those rocks. I don't know if that's a great idea. If you don't see Yeah, I mean, whatever. Everything can work in War of Rights, or almost everything can work in War of Rights, but it's difficult to support that without getting shot, and it's also difficult to get out of that without getting shot. The CSA can push further to the left. They can hop through this field. They can get over here, and they can push up even this far left. I don't think that it's that common anymore. And because I haven't played this map in pubs recently, I'm not even sure if anybody does try to do that. But more commonly, the Union the CSA will use concealment and then kind of hop from rock cluster. If the Union wants to skirmish, they'll figure out if they got the numbers to do it, and then the CSA can push those rocks there, try to overwhelm them. So from these rocks, yeah, the Union can fan out in that fence. The hard cover here is quite limited, so unless you have the numbers to force the Union to keep their heads down, this can be a precarious position to hold. Yeah, I'll say that. And you know, the Union can get here pretty well concealed and covered up until about this point. And you can see that it's not a very far dash from the corn, the fence, to try to retake those rocks. So as a CSA, you know, you're the attackers. You got to be cognizant of your flags. It's quite a hike from spawn to get here. You want to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed. And as the Union, if you see, you know, 1 or 2 flags out here, but they're looking a little thin, you might want to think about switching over here, wiping this group. If the flags have to pull out of here, they have to make it to that clump of rocks, and if you're able to shoot them down, you could probably send a group up to garrison those rocks and kill all the Rambos and the skirmishers who come to try to, you know, gather those flags. And then when the CSA returns in force, then you just pull back whoever's there. Eventually, they're going to get their flags back. You just want to make them pay for it. If the Union doesn't react to this, and say, you know, the CSA's got a fairly sizable group, or maybe 2 flags over here spawning people, the CSA can then push up to this fence. They can either go corn side, field side, or both, and then you'll frequently see them push along this fence as close as they can get to point. It's always a risky endeavor because, you know, geometry, I guess. As the CSA is moving that way, the Union can follow their flags, and they'll have a group, and they'll just move, and the CSA won't be able to see it coming, and so they'll hit them in the sides, and so what should be, right, the CSA does is to try to flank any of the defenders, because what the Union will frequently do is they'll sit in the corn, they'll use the concealment, they'll use the fence for cover, and they'll trade volleys if the CSA has worked their way up to the stone wall. You don't love trading soft cover for hard cover, but if you have concealment, you might be willing to try to do that, at least to waste some time. And so the CSA here is trying to wipe any of the Union who are in this corner. This corner here is kind of a common meeting place for the Union, and so there we are relative to point. So if you know that a lot congregates around here, again, this is where if the Union's going to use artillery, they'll frequently wheel it up to about here. And so it can be real chaos in the corner around that point. When it's time, or when the CSA believes it's time to cap, or when they've had to play cap recap, because the Union can just fall back into the woods, into the corn, beyond the reach of the CSA. But you'll see them try to clear out this set of rocks here. This is one of those things where you usually have to pay a price to come in and get it, but then if anybody wants to take it from you, they usually have to pay a price to do it, because it's, you know, it's a little island of cover and a little bit of concealment surrounded by a sea of, well, open ground. And so the idea is, if you're going to charge this, make sure you have overwhelming force, because you're going to pay the ticket price on the way in, and then you're going to try to make those tickets up in the melee and in shooting them down on the way out. But you'll frequently see a group that will try to secure these rocks, because it will allow them to put cap weight or pressure on the cap point. This juncture here is important for the CSA to have. Obviously, you would prefer the stone wall if you can get it, but the snake fence is not bad as well. If the Union has large forces in these rocks or in that woodpile, sometimes the CSA will try to charge them out first. The idea is to try to knock down as many of the points that support the defense of cap as possible. And so for the Union, that usually means you want to control, or at least not have the CSA in those rocks. So yeah, knocking down that log pile will help, at least for the CSA moving up maybe part of the stone wall and then using the hill here, the kind of depression of the elevation, as well as the stone wall to creep as close as they can to point. And then if the CSA can also wipe as many Union forces as they can back on this fence, they'll usually do it, because a lot of times if the Union expects that they're going to have to move to cap, they'll try to build up here and then they'll press down the stone wall on one side or the other, or they'll make a straight column charge for that set of rocks. And if you can control the rocks and you can control the log pile here and the stone wall, you really exert the pressure on what is cap. And so when you know it's coming, you also know that the CSA is going to try to knock those things down. So as the Union, you either want to be ready for it and don't get knocked down, or you want to move out, let the CSA move through, and then you move in behind them, and you move to control the points that control the point, if that makes sense. All right, so that is Reno's fall. Yeah, this is one I kind of like to maybe play a little bit more often. It seems like this is one where it truly is attackers favored, and yet again it befuddles me that the defenders would be dying out of line very much on this one, because it should mostly be horizontal, lateral movement, I guess, left to right, a little bit of forward and backwards, and yet people always find any reason at all to go random off, and I think that makes the defenders' job much harder on this than it has to be. Cap recap is always something the defenders can hold in their back pocket, not just allowing the attackers to exert that kind of blackmail. But I think that defenders too frequently are loath to fall back and to force attackers who are ahead in tickets to cap early. So we'll see how the meta evolves. I was going to say devolves for Reno's fall, but let's see how it evolves and see if it comes back into favor here.